I'm a huge supporter of Donald Trump, but the one thing where I don't always agree with him is foreign policy. But on the other hand, I don't think it's necessarily him that I disagree with. It's more of the isolationist supporters and followers that he has. He doesn't seem quite that isolationist. But I actually have a pretty extreme position on Ukraine. Like, the problem in Ukraine, or the problem, in the world, but specifically Europe, is that the traditional great powers of Europe completely abrogated their responsibility after World War II. And granted, I understand that World War II is extremely traumatic for these people. And they were faced the opportunity of this hegemonic power, the United States, paying for their defense. And they didn't really want to have anything to do with the war after that anyway, so they basically just completely shirked their responsibility that they have naturally and that they exercised for hundreds of years, which is to be a counterweight to each other, and specifically, in the modern world, to be a counterweight to Russia. So the idea was that the United States would be this hegemonic power and nobody else would have any responsibilities. And, that kind of worked for a while, but obviously the very fact that Russia invaded Ukraine shows that the mere existence of the United States was not an adequate deterrent. And so it's pretty much been disastrous for Europe that Western Europe, essentially Britain, France, and Germany, you have no military to speak of. That's not a natural situation. And so luckily there's signs now that they're correcting that. To what extent they really do correct it, we'll find out. But the extreme position I have is that if, of course, a big if, if my aunt had a set, but if those countries had performed their proper function, I would have actually been in support of them physically intervening in this war, especially after Russia failed. They failed their initial military operation, and now they're stuck in a war of attrition with some third-rate power. So they're extremely vulnerable. They're war-weary now. We're years down the road. Now would be the perfect time for an actual functioning Western Europe to just go in there and clean up the mess. And I would support that. And I know a lot of people are, we live in a time of relative peace, at least among great powers, and so people are naturally fearful of war, as they should be. War is bad, but the way the world's worked for thousands of years is that you have to have deterrence. You have to have checks and balances. And until Russia realizes that they're going to face a peer opponent, there's really no reason for them to stop doing what they're doing. They're taking full advantage of this notion that peers are never going to go to war again. And so, again, this is all hypothetical, like I said, because they don't have a peer in Europe. They should, but they don't. But I'm saying that if they did, I think you have to make the courageous decision that, hey, I know it's been a long time since peers went to war and all this stuff. And I know, Russia has all this bluster about nuclear weapons and all this stuff. But you just simply can't let Russia do this. And so I kind of fear that you're going to have to do it eventually anyway. It's really just a matter of, are you going to do it when you have a good opportunity to do it? Or are you going to roll the dice and end up having to face Russia under less favorable conditions later? So, I don't know. But the fact that Europe has no military to speak of means that they have no choice but to delay it. So I really think that there's a lot of people in Europe and in the U.S., in power, that are starting to realize what I'm saying, that there's a real possibility that they're going to have to go to war with Russia. Like, I don't think that this huge military buildup that Europe is saying they're going to do is just strictly like for defense, or is just strictly theoretical. I think they have it in their minds that there is a very real possibility that they are going to be at war with Russia sometime in the next 20 years, and they're getting ready for it.